Hello everyone. So I'm now creating another video here as I've realized there are a few pieces that feel really important and meaningful to share, and I want to be able to give this to you as we bring this course to completion. In this short video I'm going to speak about one, the relationship between Jupiter and Saturn. I feel grasping this contrast will really help us to ground our understanding of how Saturn functions. And I also want to speak a little more deeply about Saturn's relationship to time, space, and the idea of karma. So, to speak about Jupiter, Jupiter we know is a planet of expansion. It corresponds to where we have an intuitive sense of more possibilities. We're expanding our framework of understanding in this life. So in Jupiter, we go on the journey. We travel all around the world. We expand and grow our capacity to directly experience the truth in our lives, moment to moment. But it's mutable fire. Jupiter and Sag is an inherently unsustainable archetype. It's just about the realization process, and it has no inherent boundaries, and it has no inherent reality in terms of application and livability. What happens when we go from Sagittarius to Capricorn, we're taking the expanded knowledge, the insights that we've gained, and we're manifesting it in our lives. This is why it's so important. Timothy was speaking about this, how Saturn is a yin archetype. I can't stress how important it is that we understand this aspect of Saturn, especially in patriarchal world where we have all these associations with Saturn as punishment, hard work, rules, limitations. The essence of what I want to bring forth about Saturn, in being a yin archetype, we internalize the knowledge we have and we cultivate a concept called self-responsibility, where we take it upon ourselves to make manifest within form, within time and space, the truths we have come to value, what we inherently within ourselves know to be right. And this takes stillness. This takes self-reflection. What is important to me? What are the truths? What are the values that I deeply believe in? How am I going to live it? How am I going to make it manifest in my life? Detail, practicality. How am I going to define my physical reality in harmony with what I know is right? So people oftentimes think of Jupiter as expansion and Saturn as contraction. And I feel that a better word than contraction is compression. Because contraction kind of emphasizes this idea of small or decrease. What's happening in Saturn is energy is being compressed into center, into a still point of focus. Possibilities of direction, of what is just in potential, it's not being acted upon. It's being condensed into a point of presence. And through self-reflection, through wisdom, through self-knowledge, through learning the cycles and the ways of life, we learn how to make manifest these possibilities within form. I'm getting a little chilly, so let me stand in the sun. Let's move over here. And so that's really what brings out this greater understanding that Saturn is just so yin. We're building, but this building, this growth that happens within Saturn is truly grounded in the present moment. It comes from a compression of energy into a very still point and center. It's stillness, it's self-knowledge, it's internalization. And I love the metaphor for Saturn as, the olive tree. It's one of the strongest trees out there. I used to live in Israel and Palestine, and the olive tree doesn't grow very big, but it grows very slow, and it's solid, it's strong, and I feel that is the very essence of Saturn. And as I've taught, the way that we build our life is in coming into alignment with how we're moving, how we take each step, and so we're fully present. And that's the beautiful part about Saturn. We're manifesting spirit within form. We're making it livable, breathable, practical in our lives. So I want to speak to this other piece, which is, we know Saturn corresponds to boundaries, rules, limitations, time and space. and this idea of karma. On one level, we understand that karma manifests in terms of, in one way of thinking of it, if we acted out of alignment in the past, we might have to learn a lesson in this lifetime to come into balance. And that's true, but I mentioned this in the last video, karma is truly a reflection of our own consciousness, and I want to offer that time and space and the very reality of how we are all in relationship to time and space 100% reflects how our consciousness is conditioned, meaning the limitations and the parameters of time and space are not an inherent original function of limitation. The limitations that are relevant to our life is dependent entirely upon our consciousness. And I want to give a couple examples of this. You may have heard of John of God. John of God is a Brazilian healer, and he has a casa that's very famous, very well known for people coming all around the world to see him. And what he does is he actually leaves his body, he excarnates, so to speak, and these ex-incarnate beings come into his body. These beings are actually Brazilian doctors from prior lives who, in a dear saintliness and service to humanity, have offered themselves to heal others through the body of John of God. So people go to see him, and what we would often think of as miracles, things that can't or shouldn't be happening or can't be explained within typical time-space thinking, occur. He might stick a needle in their eye and pull out something and a disease is taken away, or an incision in the chest, and they're not going to feel pain. Most of the time there's no pain involved. Very often healings happen like that immediately. And what's interesting too is the physiology of John of God changes as different beings work through him. In fact, according to the being that's working through his body will conform to the consciousness of that being, physically change. There's one being that had a limp in that lifetime, and then John of God will actually manifest the limp. It's the most interesting phenomena. Now, what's also really interesting is sometimes people will go to see him, and they won't necessarily get a miracle healing. They won't necessarily be cured right then and there from their disease or whatever they went for healing. They might be given a process through which, in a time and space process, they will do certain practices, need to follow a certain ritual for a certain number of days. Or they might be redirected to a different path to continue their journey. What's the difference between those that manifest healing in the moment versus those that are given a path that involves much more time and space? Fundamentally, there's no difference. And we have to be so mindful not to judge and place a value judgment on the spiritual value of those who experience instant manifestation versus those who need to work through more in time and space. One, everything that's manifested now has taken a long time to manifest. So if a person seems to experience instant healing, or let's say instant success in this lifetime, it is this moment in the context of many, many other lives that have come before. So we should never judge the seeming appearance of a person that's struggling their whole life for success or healing versus someone that can experience it instantly, because that's just looking at the very immediate physical present moment incarnation. Two, in essence, there's no difference between these paths, because what it basically reflects, according to how the soul's consciousness is conditioned, we each need to walk a path within the context of time and space, working with respect to the natural boundaries and limitations of our own consciousness to make manifest consciously our reality as we are now. So the time and space that we work through is a way for us to unravel and ground a fully conscious reality now in a way that is relevant to how our consciousness is conditioned. And there's no value judgment in that. That's literally how we work within form in a masterful way. And it's different for everyone. Take a soul who is more in a consensus stage of evolution. Let's say a woman with Cancer in the 7th house, Saturn and Cancer in the 7th house. There might be social conditioning around, this is how I have to behave as a woman in relationship. This is the right Christian way to do things. This is what's right, this is what's wrong, this is what's acceptable, this is what's not. Consciousness, her gravity is default in a very specific place. We all have that in a certain way. For her journey, it'll be inappropriate to try to speak in absolute truths. Rather, she's going to manifest a reality that will reflect the limitations of her reality, of her own consciousness, and grow from there. So when she's ready, it might be in this lifetime or in a different lifetime, she might have, let's say, a child who she can't understand. She doesn't know how to meet the emotional needs of that child. And that might break her heart open. It might take her on a journey of deeper self-reflection. Or she might have a partner that says some really hurtful things to her, that makes her really feel unloved and unwanted, that devastates her so deeply that it'll take her into a path of deeper self-reflection and open up Saturn, the places that have become constricted and hard and judged. Because at the core of that Saturn signature might be a shame. I'm not worthy. I have to be this, this, and that to be acceptable. So there might be someone who lives their entire life with a certain disease, and it might not be in their karmic path to heal that disease, and it would be inappropriate for us to project that idea upon them. To masterfully work with astrology, or just presence, to really see the soul of another, is to have respect and deep appreciation for the necessity of each individual working within the context of time and space. And again, this is the middle way. This is integrating form and formlessness with so much respect and patience, to not transcend nor to get so involved in the heaviness that we think it's limiting our infinite spirit. To give another fun example, take a soul that in a past lifetime, however you want to phrase it, was a formless creative essence that was creating galaxies, and in the flick of their cosmic wrist would birth the most beautiful colors and energies, and then they manifest in a human body. Let's say they have Saturn and Leo in the 12th house, and let's say they manifested a father in this lifetime who is narcissistic, alcoholic, wasn't present. 12th house escapism, Saturn and Leo, narcissistic, not present in time-space reality. They might feel completely lost, and they might actually be dealing with this underlying karmic conditioning of form is a contradiction to my formlessness. And so they might walk a path in this lifetime where they'll actually learn how to integrate their infinity within form. They might need to experience limitations, experience their own boundaries. Maybe later on in their life, they might set up an orphanage or a place where children of all ages can come and play and receive unconditional love and guidance.